Hey everyone, and welcome to the Not a Blur e-commerce show. I'm Rock. I spent the last 20 years in e-commerce. I built two e-commerce businesses to 50 million plus per year. And sitting next to me is Nigel Thomas, the CEO of Alpha Inbound, an agency focusing on customer acquisition for health, wellness, and beauty brands. And actually, Nigel, we have a lot in common. So I spent the last 10 years in the health industry and the brand side. So we should have a really fun conversation today. And for all
I really appreciate the opportunity, Rock, and obviously here to try and share some best practices and have a great conversation with you. And in the meantime, we can get some valuable content out there, then that'd be great as well. But thanks again. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thank you for taking the time. And the topic for today, how to scale your business like crazy through customer acquisition. Now, the world being where it is, are you feeling that growth has been becoming, swear words? Everyone now just talking about retention, profits, and growth just seems to be sort of getting edged out of the whole conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was actually visiting one of our clients here in Vancouver the other day, and they're a men's grooming product, and they've done 20 million a year. And he was telling me about back in 2017, they used to spend 400K a month on Facebook. They used to slap up like images in Canva, use just like basic promo videos, and drive all the traffic to the homepage. That was the extent of the marketing, and they absolutely crushed it. That's not the
Taking people to the homepage and spending 400K. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. But that was back in 2017 when we had this arbitrage of attention. And obviously, Facebook was in its glory days. And it was because of a supply and demand thing. There wasn't that much competition. And the big players who really started dumping their big marketing budgets into digital weren't quite there yet. Obviously, they were just kind of testing it out. And they had, their marketing budgets in more, the traditional channels. Now all of that's changed. And there's a big reset in the market. And what it takes now to grow is just so much more complicated. So I think the problem is that I've seen, Rock, in the last 6 to 12 months, and I speak to probably like 50 different brand owners every single month now, that most people have based their unit economics on if they're just specifically D2C brands, on these unrealistic market conditions. And obviously now that a lot of the talks around, well, after iOS 14, the prices are just too much. But the fact of reality is they base their businesses and their unit economics, like I said, on these unrealistic market conditions. Now what we're experiencing, in my belief at least, is actually this is normal. We've reset. Now we're back to baseline. So the brands who invested in the right areas in terms of strong supply chains, really good deals with their manufacturers, understanding the products, hiring the best people, instead of just focusing everything on buying more and more customers, they're the ones now who have got the competitive advantage because they've got better profit margins, they've stacked up their war chests, and now they can keep competing. Whereas the brands that just had everything like dialed into customer acquisition and nothing else, they're just constantly now trying to chase these unrealistic returns because of their unit economics are now failing them. So that's like a high level overview of what I've seen going on in the market. And of course, we can get into the strategies and everything else. Growth is still definitely possible on all of these platforms, especially Meta and Facebook and Instagram. It's just the strategy has completely changed. So now we need to adapt. And of course, I'm willing to share those processes, but I'm interested to hear your take as well.
I mean, yeah. So we've definitely seen. You mentioned 2017, and yeah, 2017. That was a magical time when Facebook made all of us marketers lazy. It was doing all of our marketing more or less, for us. You could sell practically anything at a profit. I mean, I had friends that were building even 100 million businesses selling more or less cheap Chinese shit, just using the incredible algorithmic targeting power of Facebook to move product. But yeah, the world has certainly changed. So on one hand, we're seeing that all the privacy-induced changes, and iOS 14 is just one piece of that, right? It's also what's happening gradually with cookies, different tracking technologies. I think will slowly get us to a point where we actually will start living in a world that is, well, still what, maybe 50% measurement, and the rest, the good old econometric times of traditional marketing, traditional direct marketing, traditional media spending. And that is something that we're getting to. Then on the other hand, we also see that with measurement a bit going to shit, with customer acquisition costs rising, even though on the other hand, CPMs have been going down now for quite some time. Actually, I've seen CPMs, at least on Facebook, decrease for the past 6 to 8 months. Cost of customer acquisition going up a bit because of poor targeting, poor tracking, poor measurement, but actual CPMs going down, especially as we see players start to exit the market, especially bad players that aren't doing that well. But where I definitely see the future is there's still a lot of growth to be had. There's still a lot of growth to be generated. You just have to do it the right way, like you started saying. And for me, that is also in building out really complete brands that don't just do direct to consumer, that can travel omnichannel, that can be sold in Amazon and other online specialty retailers, that can go to offline retail, and essentially just become, real brands and not just quick DTC money grabs.
Yeah, I was actually just going to say, is the statistic, Rot, that always blows my mind when I hear it, which is out of all the sales that happen, just let's focus on the US market, only 15% still now in 2023 is e-commerce. 15%. So I think because this opportunity was so good for the D2C brands, they were ignorant of all the other channels. Whereas now they understand they've got to integrate into those other ecosystems, because I find this really, I say frustrating, but also confusing, that a lot of brands, they don't think about the psychology of what's happening on these platforms. Newsflash, people don't go to Facebook and Instagram to buy products. They go there to socialize with friends. They do, however, go to Amazon to buy products. They usually will go to Google to buy products. So now we're understanding that, and even it can go wider. If someone can see your ad on Facebook, then they can buy your, product in a retail store. So it's understanding how to integrate these different ecosystems. And I just think because that opportunity was so good, we, like you said, we got lazy and we didn't understand the actual customer journey. We just focused on what was making the most money, right?
Yeah, because Facebook was just, for a while, Facebook was pure magic. I remember at certain points, Facebook actually broke our servers by sending so much high quality converting traffic. And that was like glitch in the matrix that happened maybe for half an hour. But it was an interesting glitch in the matrix. So
yeah,
in your experience, what today in acquisition works best to really still drive profitable growth, especially if you're a brand in like the 5 to 20 million range? What can you still do today to start to continue growing profitably on the acquisition side?
Yeah, so personalization, like high level, that's the thing. So let's talk about that and break it up a little bit. So in terms of acquiring customers, the different parts you've got to play, of course, I think, we all know, and all your listeners will know on this podcast, content is the big game now. But the problem is a lot of these brands, and maybe some of them listening, they're using different third parties for different parts of the funnel. So let's say they've got a content agency for one thing, they've got a media buying agency for one thing, they've got a CRO agency for the landing pages, they've got a retention agency for the other thing. Now, all these different agencies, of course, they're hired because they do well in the marketplace, they have their best practices. But the problem is the customer doesn't know that. So what the customer gets through their experience of seeing one ad, going to the website, seeing a landing page, but then seeing the retention, is they get a disjointed, confusing experience. And that's not what a brand is about. A brand is about associating when you see the brand with X. So I'll give you an example. We were with an 8-figure skincare brand called Eczema Honey. And when we started working with them, instead of just launching ads, or they were already working with a different agency, but launching and, trying to scale up ads, we spent our time doing research. We researched that within their audience, there was mothers that were actually the best-selling customers that were buying products for their children who had eczema. So what did we do? We went out there in the marketplace. We found creators who literally had children, mothers that had eczema. They were telling them of all the pain points. We researched, talking to the customers, looking through the testimonials we had, the stories that they were being told by doctors to put steroids on their children. And this was a life-changing product for them. These are the kind of customers that are going to tell 5 of their friends. So we created content around that. We created a story, but then we also created a landing page in line with that specific angle. So when the customers had seen the ad on Facebook or TikTok, go directly now through to a landing page, which, talks about that specific pain point. And one video alone that we created, like within a few weeks, generated something like $130,000 of revenue from one video. So the point is it's about going back to basics. It's about doing the research. It's about, yeah, sure, if you've got first party data, and I'm sure we'll come on to that, that's extremely powerful. Instead of relying on what Facebook is just going to give you in terms of from their third party data and their algorithm, take the research into your own hands and make that journey more customized. So from a strategic mindset level, that's the play. And obviously we can get into the technicalities of actually how to implement that across these paid channels.
So how do you guys capture all of those customer insights? Because in the end, right, it's really about capturing customer insights and then infusing that intimate knowledge you get of the consumer, of the customer, into all of your marketing, into your communication, into your landing pages, into the email follow-ups, everything else. So what's usually your process for getting, the highest quality customer insights that you can then imbue into all of your marketing?
So for example, honestly, the best thing is doing face-to-face interactions. We don't obviously have the bandwidth to do that for all of our brands, but we were lucky enough for Eczema Honey to be invited by the founder Manesh to their event with Ulta Beauty. So Ulta Beauty have a conference every year. They have all their brands there with the store managers. We were able there to interact with, the Ulta Beauty store managers who were telling us about what the customers were saying. And actually a lot of them were customers themselves. We had mothers coming up telling us, out of all the brands that we're talking to today, Eczema Honey was the one brand that I wanted to come up to say thank you. You completely changed my children's life. And it was those face-to-face interactions. We don't have the bandwidth for that, which actually I think a lot of the brands will do. You can obviously jump on some Zoom calls with your, highest customers. I think even if you don't do it as a founder or a CMO, then some other people in your team should do that. But then if we want to do it at a larger scale, obviously pre-purchase surveys, post-purchase surveys, and, emailing different or doing surveys via email on the retention side. And then the other thing is a community. So those guys have like a Facebook group, 15,000 people asking questions in there. There's a lot of examples. Brands do this in Discord communities, just really understanding, asking the questions from your customers. But then it's about housing that data. So if you, have a spreadsheet where all of this data is collated, I think that's where a lot of the opportunities are missed, because obviously data on its own, as we both know, Rock, it's useless. It's how you filter that data. It's how you manage that data. And then obviously it's how you analyze that data for your insights. And it's also the questions you ask, because obviously, the outputs are only going to be as good as the inputs. So asking questions on the surveys such as, why did you nearly not buy this product? Like, what was stopping you from buying more of this product? Where did you hear about our product? And that's where we can not only understand the customer journey side of things, but also, and specific to that brand, we can understand, the main objections and also the new product ideas that the customers want to see. So, the revelations we can get out of this, the idea is all this traffic that's coming to the website, depending on the brand, but if they're in that 5 to 20 million range, they're going to have a lot of website traffic and a lot of customer data. The idea is to turn that into a thought idea machine for all your new marketing campaigns, but also all your new product launches. And I really believe the future, we're changing hands now, that in the past, it was all about the third-party data, that Facebook had all the power. I have a big conviction, what we're trying to do more of our clients, right, developing these processes with them, is taking up control of that, bringing that in-house, first-party data. That's where I believe the future is going to be, and where, you know, we're going to win and lose these, because ultimately, obviously, they're all auction systems at the end of the day, these paid platforms, and the brands that are going to win are going to be the ones that can compete more fiercely. And the way to do that is to already answer all of the objections before you make the content. So it's so customized, it speaks to those specific avatars, and then splitting up the customer journeys around different hero products, having one angle of content that goes to one landing page, having another angle of content that goes to another landing page. And then what's going to happen in terms of the evolution in e-commerce, in my opinion, is plugging all of that first-party data into AI models. And that's where you can start educating the AI, and then it will just give you so many ideas once it obviously, you know, is trained. And these systems, they go through that evolution. But what brands who are listening to this podcast right now need to start doing is start getting the inputs, gathering the data so they can get ahead of their competition.
So what for you are the best ways, the best tools to actually start putting this data together, how to house it, where to put it, how to manage it? Because, you know, we all already have so much data, but most companies have it, you know, in ways that, you know, they can't really do a lot with it. It's just sitting there in a silo somewhere. How do you build it in a way that's actually actionable and also future safe, since we're talking about utilizing this for AI for the future?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it depends where your starting point is, but you can literally start with a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet or a Google spreadsheet. I think it's more about the quality of the data. So I wouldn't, you know, get too complicated. Obviously, there's like different Shopify apps. We usually lean on the brands we work with. But I'll also be honest in saying this is something on our roadmap as an agency that we're looking at the best ways. What we've been utilizing so far is mainly just building it out on spreadsheets and just, you know, getting the quality of information out there, and start obviously inputting that into the landing pages and the content side of things. So I wouldn't be thinking too overcomplicated. It's more about getting started. But maybe you have some ideas for me on that side, because this is one of the things we're looking to tackle within the next few months.
Now, unfortunately, also not always looking for people who are hopefully 100 times smarter than me in putting data together in their warehouses, actually figuring out how to get all of the knowledge we have in a usable format. That's so okay. You get customer insights, you collect all of that data, you start creating marketing based on customer avatars, you start personalizing, you start optimizing for the full funnel. So from the ad creative to the landing page, to the email follow-up, and you build all that stuff out. Now then, how do you then measure and optimize?
Yeah, sure. So just to clarify, we don't do the retention side. Usually we have great retention partners, so we'll introduce them. Or if they've got a retention team working with the brand, obviously most of the brands we work with in that range do, then we'll collaborate with their team to make sure we've got the congruency so we don't have that disjointed experience. So we focus on the content, obviously the ads and the landing pages, just to clarify on that side of things. But yeah, how do we track that? Well, really, I mean, like very high level, of course, like from a growth perspective, the main ratio we're looking at is LTV to CAC. You know, a healthy ratio there is 3-1, but the more we can increase that lifetime value. So to that point, if we can bring in, going back to the example of Eczema Honey, we can bring in customers that are going to tell 5 of their friends. Now we can start tapping into word of mouth marketing. So I think in the past, it wasn't as much about, it was just about acquiring customers for a certain cost. Now it's more about acquiring one customer that's going to be an evangelist for the brand. And because they hit that exact persona and they associate with the brand, and then they can go and tell their friends. And of course, obviously buying more products to increase that lifetime value. So we're really looking for those segments of LTV. Obviously, the more data, the more spend we have, the more data to look at, the more we can do segmentation. But overall, that ratio is the LTV to CAC ratio.
And then you look at that on the mostly the macro level, or how deep do you then go into on the optimization side? So you optimize based on campaign level, ad creative level. how far can you actually still go in today's, well, let's call it complicated world, where attribution is a bit of a mess, where you have omnichannel distribution on top. So, an ad driving people, of course, to your website, but also having an impact on your sales on Amazon. Also looking at cross-channel impact, because it still seems that most people, or at least most e-commerce brands at a certain level, they tend to look at Facebook, TikTok still as primarily just a direct conversion channel. But in reality, every Facebook impression creates brand demand. It creates demand for your brand. It creates a certain level of brand attachment that then later gets transferred into a Google search, into a conversion, and so on. And then we see we're spending all this money on Facebook, we're spending a bit less on Google. But in reality, a lot of these times, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok are the ones that are actually driving demand, and Google and Amazon and the other channels are just sort of capturing that demand and converting it. But without creating it in the first place, nothing would really happen, right?
Yeah, so it's back to the psychology of how do the users actually use these platforms. People don't go to Facebook to buy products. They go there to socialize with friends. So if you're basing your marketing, the way you measure your marketing with something that doesn't actually align with how the customers use these platforms, obviously that's not going to work. And you're basically just got inaccurate numbers. So it's crazy because some of the brands who still have based most of their spend on Facebook will look at that and will tell them, like, at the end of the day, you're not spending enough on Google. What you're basically doing is you're educating your customer, and then we'll see it. We'll go to Google, and they're going to Google or Amazon, and they're buying your competitors' products. So in reality, what you've done is you basically just paid for your competitors to acquire more customers, and you just done the heavy lifting for them. So what we focus on most is MER, marketing efficiency ratio. Of course, we leverage different attribution software like Triple Whale and Northbeam, starting to see a few inaccuracies. But what we'll tend to do when we launch the ads is we'll figure out if we've got a creative or a conversion issue. So on platform, we'll look at creative metrics such as hook ratio, retention rate, like how many people overall, or how cheap are we getting people to the website? If we nail that, fantastic. Let's just do more of what works there. If we're not, let's make more creatives. Then it's about, are we converting enough of that traffic? So once we analyze, and again, if you take a step back and when we do these audits, these complementary audits with the brands we work with before we work with them, we'll see that they're actually focusing most of their resources on where the customer journey isn't leaking. So they might have great creative, and they're getting a really good cost per click or whatever it is, but they're just not converting enough of that traffic. So I think figuring out if you've got a creative or a conversion issue across all of your channels is the big play, and then focusing your time and resources in to, solving that problem where the customer journey is leaking. And then obviously how we're looking across the channels, MER, marketing efficiency ratio, all the marketing spend versus all the revenue we come back. Typically what we'll see is TikTok is like the highest, discovery channel. So you're not going to get incredible conversions there. Then after that, you've got Facebook, and then after that, Google. So they'll be spending the most on Facebook predominantly of that marketing budget, whether that's like 60, 70%. TikTok, the algorithm isn't quite as strong. You need a lot more resource on the content side because creative fatigues a lot faster. So that's usually a little bit less of spend, maybe like 10, 20%. And then the rest of it's usually made up through Google, where there's usually a bit less spend, but the ROAS and the conversion rate's a lot higher. And that's how we see those channels working in symbiosis. So when we scale up Facebook, we see a direct impact on Google. But the important point to note is this doesn't always come in the first month. This might come 1, 2, 3 months down the line. And what I've seen a lot of brands doing, Rock, is they cut Facebook out because they're like, well, back in, 2 years ago, Facebook was doing this. Now it's not anymore. And then all of a sudden, 2 months down the line, Google just isn't performing anymore. And then what they start doing is like, right, we need to find a new agency for Google. But in reality, they're just not understanding what the actual problem is. And they never understood in reality how the customer journey was working. Again, back to the unrealistic market conditions. So yeah, hope that gives it a bit of an insight of how we operate the brands we work with.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think one of the most eye-opening moments for me was essentially just seeing how much brand search directly correlates with your Facebook impressions on a particular hero product or a particular brand and so on. And what I've seen in most cases across Europe, it's almost a one-to-one correlation. And as soon as you might want to save up some money on Facebook ads, you turn off the pipe or you decrease the pipe, and then like I said, 2-3 months later, you start seeing your brand start to go down. And with that, you start losing out on your most profitable acquisition channel, which is not really an acquisition channel, more of a customer pickup point for demand you've generated earlier on Facebook and TikTok and everywhere else.
Yeah, I was just going to say the creative is not to make the sale. The creative is to educate and generate interest to get them to the website. And obviously, if we can make it a more of a virality aspect, so people can share that, in the comment section out to different feeds, that's what we're going for. So we can just widen the ecosystem, but the conversion, the selling happens on the website. And I think a lot of brands have forgotten this.
Well, yeah, again, Facebook spoiled us during the magical golden years. But you mentioned TikTok. Okay, you mentioned TikTok. I do remember seeing a couple of your LinkedIn posts with a couple of amazing results that you achieved for a couple of customers. You were talking a bit about the TikTok creative that actually sells. Do you maybe share your recipe, if there is one, with us? How do you actually make TikTok work?
Yeah, so I think, again, if we talk from a higher level, so firstly, the big problem was the creative side of things and the algorithm. So people forget, Rock, that Facebook's 18 years old. That's a hell of a lot of data that's gone through that platform. Obviously, TikTok, the way it's going to scale as a company is by locking in their ad system. Like, we know the recipe. You bring in all the eyeballs of incredible reach, and then you start charging people for it so you can keep up with that demand. We've seen it, enough times now to know that's a recipe for success of these platforms. But obviously at the start, it's going to take time for you to give inputs to that machine for it to give you the right outputs, i.e., customers that buy your products. So that's one thing we're competing with. So that's why I said you need a lot more creative. And by the way, we've seen massive improvements over the last 6 to 12 months with TikTok. And they've got, a good team over there that we're working strongly in the background. So that's catching up, but you do need more creative because it fatigues faster and it's harder to find those customers. So you're battling with that. The other thing, though, is it's a different platform. Actually, TikTok released some stuff themselves recently talking about the fact they don't see themselves as a social media platform. They see themselves as an entertainment platform. So you have to understand what people are doing on that platform. And if you've ever seen someone using TikTok, I have to actually delete the app myself because it's so goddamn addictive. But people are scrolling through like a slot machine. But then the thing is when they hit your website, if they're now going to a really, really long drawn out piece of content, the psychologies aren't matching up there. So people, what they're doing is they're driving all their TikTok, even if they master the creative, to a landing page which is designed for Facebook traffic or Google traffic. Obviously, that is not going to work. So what we tend to see working best with TikTok is short form listicles are great, blogs, like really short form content and quizzes, really to capture that demand and that attention, because it is a different style of audience. And I know a lot of people talk about, well, it's just for Gen Zs or whatever. So are we actually going to have people with disposable income? Some of the fastest growing audiences on TikTok are like millennials that do have that disposable income. It's just about understanding the psychology of how they use the platform and the fact that just because they jump from your platform to your website does not mean that they're now going to be thinking differently. Another tool, I hope you don't mind me sharing one of the tools I've been using, is VideoWise. So VideoWise, I'm close friends with the CEO, Claudio, an incredible team. They've been working with brands such as like True Classic, Dr. Squatch and whatnot. And what they do is they have these shoppable videos. So on the left-hand side, you'll basically, if you go to Eggs Mahoney's website, you'll see it in action. But whether it's on mobile, where most of the traffic is going to come through TikTok or on desktop, a video will pop up left-hand corner showcasing one of the best-selling products. people can click into that video, and when they're inside the video, they can then have the option to buy the product, and the brand can choose when different products are showcased in that video. So now we're really capturing and engaging the customer. So that's more about the experience. So using tools like that, and that's where I think e-commerce is going, is just really understanding how to use a video platform such as TikTok, but then make sure that the experience is consistent when you hit that platform. And we're testing lots of stuff. I wouldn't say we've 100% nailed it, but it's a bit of the wild, wild west, but it's obviously a good chance to get in there early. One thing I would say is about TikTok, though, what we've noticed in terms of the impact on the brands who work with Rock is the new audiences, like in terms of like completely new audiences that are coming from TikTok, is the best by far. So what a lot of people don't understand with Facebook is the view through conversion is massive. So a lot of the brands are actually bringing customers in that have already bought their products, even if it's a long time ago, and their exclusions aren't working properly. Whereas we start to see that new customer acquisition really start ramping up with the TikTok side. So it definitely is a fresh audience. And it is also like you have to understand how the creative works. So I'm happy to talk about that more. But yeah, they're my insights on TikTok.
I'm just starting to think a bit about, and maybe you can take me through my process. So you're there on TikTok to be entertained. You're to have fun, maybe to educate yourself a bit. You click on an ad, you get my landing page. How would you see would be like, okay, quiz definitely is probably one of the things that you mentioned. That is a very nice continuation of that. It's a bit of infotainment, entertainment. What other ways do we have to really continue with that TikTok experience and still try to get something out of that click? Do you focus on the purchase? Do you focus on the lead gen? Do you focus on doing a product video, testimonials? How do you keep within that entertainment scope and still try to generate some value?
Yeah, so listicles can work great as well. So like I said, let's just say we're just using this theme, the Eczema Honey brand. But let's just say we've got a mother who's talking about how it's helped solve their children's eczema and they've seen it on TikTok. Then they'll go to a landing page where it's like 5 reasons why, natural eczema products can help stop your children having to use steroids. So then it's more of like an info type of thing where it's some like real quick tips. And then obviously throughout that page, there's the product is mentioned. And then they can click through to the product page.
It's almost like a native advertorial, for example.
Exactly. But a lot quicker fire. Yeah. It's about, but the personas. You have to understand the persona.
And that's where, again, the market research and customer insights come into play.
Yes, exactly. And obviously you have to do that for different platforms. So TikTok's going to be slightly different to Facebook. And yeah, obviously your content would be defined by how well you know your market.
Okay, that's actually very cool. So I definitely need to think a bit more about that and see how to use TikTok for the new brands. I'm pretty
yeah. Something else, by the way, I've been thinking about more recently, and I've actually been in discussions with a few apps. So I think that the eastern side of the world has really conquered this. We see, can't remember the name of the guy, but there was one live streamer that did, in 24 hours, 2 billion in revenue from one live stream. Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
I think he's called like something like the Hair King or something like that. He's really big in China. The Western way of like the world, the cultural differences are massive. How can we integrate that philosophy of live selling? And obviously with all the higher production, the content, there's going to be something I really feel, Rock, and brands that can figure this out, where they create, maybe it's like documentaries around certain personas, and they drive people from TikTok, whether it's on TikTok, who knows? They've tried some live selling stuff. It's not worked very well at all yet. But maybe it's one of these apps, such as Tapcart or whatever. There's a few different providers I've been speaking to where they get people into a live selling environment. So it's more about community there. I feel like TikTok can move in that direction potentially, but more for e-commerce in general. And I think live selling will be a big thing, but it's just how do we use that with all the Western culture. So that's something I'm also trying to figure out, but I think brands should be looking into that.
But I mean, in a way, it's an extension or a new development on home shopping, right?
Yes.
Yeah. This has been around for decades with QVC, HSM Plus, everyone else. It's just probably a new format, different way of giving information, a bit more fun, a bit more entertaining, and with influencers in the background.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at Amazon, what's the one thing that Amazon are missing? It's social media, right? You know, Amazon have everything locked down apart from social media. So if they had that community side of things, then they would dominate everything. So again, I just think that's a big area of opportunity.
Definitely. Okay, now TikTok was fun and interesting. A bit hard probably for a lot of people to get really their heads around yet. But how about Facebook ads? I remember reading one of your recent posts. We were talking about a process that you call ATOS, that you use to really scale Facebook ads with most of your customers. Can you briefly take us through that? So how does that work? Because again, let's say that everyone out there, even though growth has become a bit of a dirty word, everyone still wants profitable new customer acquisition, profitable growth. So how do we do that with Facebook, with a process that you guys are using?
Yeah, so that acronym is short for analyze, iterate, test, optimize, and scale. That's what the ATOS system stands for. So I think a lot of brands, it's all about, we only have so much time in the day, so you allocate where the resources should be put. And again, when we audit the accounts, Rock, a lot of the brands, they already have all the answers sat there in their ad account. They're not reviewing the data properly. So the first step being analyzing what's working. And I already mentioned what we're trying to figure out there. Do we have a creative problem or a conversion problem? Once we know that, that's where we shift the resource. So then the next step of that is iterating. Obviously, with that research, and when we figure out and we list out the best performing creative around certain avatars, that's when we can start testing, headlines, hooks, images, different creators that have worked before and designs around that feedback. So we're iterating in line with the data, depending on obviously how much testing you've done. I'd also say for Facebook ads, one of the big problems a lot of the big brands have is naming conventions. They don't have a solid naming conventions in their ad accounts. And when you're spending like $500,000 a month or 100K plus a month, this becomes massive in terms of iterating and analyzing. One of the first things we usually do, Rock, when we go into ad accounts is just consolidate. Some of the biggest campaigns you have, it's the CBO campaign, you might be spending like 10K a day. And it's more about simplifying down how we can test things really aggressively. But I think people have got too lost in the whole split testing thing to the point where they're not spending enough money on the things that work, and they're just split testing for the sake of split testing. And you go into the ad accounts and there's hundreds of creatives that just aren't working, and they're basically diversifying all of their spend across all of these different creatives, not playing to the strength of the algorithm. Back to the whole, like Facebook have even talked about it themselves. You want to get 50 conversions per ad set. If you're going to do that, you need consolidation. And the way to do that is having correct naming conventions so you can quickly iterate and test. But most importantly, you can look in that ad account in a split second and see what's working and what isn't. So I'd say that's a big area of opportunity.
So I think that, Nigel, and this is really one of the best topics to go into. So naming conventions. I know every customer, every business is a bit different, but for you, which are like the most important things that you would put into naming conventions? Like, the creator, the hook, the type of creative, targeting. What kind of stuff do you usually put in there?
Yeah, so it's that stuff that you want to be split testing. So obviously, like the angle, if we're using a certain offer, because obviously offers work extremely well with direct to consumer, that can make or break a campaign sometimes. An angle, a hook that's working, a creator that's working, and then obviously certain targeting and interests. they're the main things we cover. And then maybe you've got some specific headlines, but that really is in relation to the hook. So they're the main things we'll have for the naming conventions. And then obviously we can start seeing at high level what's working, what isn't.
Well, one thing that we did back about 2 years ago was we actually started putting designer names into the naming conventions, just so we can then also do a sort of designer rewarding models on ad creative and try to reward ad creative designers for, well, essentially producing better converting ads. That was
and that's also to the creators, because you want to figure out the creators that work for your brand. And then not only can you get that creator, actually, I've got a pro tip on this. Not only can you get that creator to start creating more content, but also creators who are like them. The same persona. The pro tip I was going to talk about is if you have a creator and you've named it out through your naming conventions that's working really well, think about whitelisting across their account. So if they've got a following, and even if they don't, honestly, it doesn't really matter. But that kind of social proof is massive. So you can basically plug your ads through their page and whitelist through their account. We see massive increases in performance when you do that. And that's where obviously naming out the creators on the naming convention side is really important. For any D2C brands listening to this, just have a quick look through your ad account. If you're working with an agency, ask them what are they doing on the naming convention side. If you're not getting very strategic answers on that, personally, I'd be worried, because that means that they're not reviewing the data correctly, which obviously means you're probably wasting a lot of money.
Then Nigel, on your process, so I think I rudely interrupted you when you started talking about naming the naming conventions. So let's bring that one, the whole ethos process, home with the remaining.
Cool. So the last three things we haven't touched on yet is test, optimize, and scale. So obviously what we want to do when we're testing is, firstly, we usually start with a broad audience. The content does a lot of the targeting. People think when you're not doing the interest-based targeting, it means you're not doing targeting. Not the case at all. The algorithms are just a lot smarter now. So you want to give it the best possible chance. And with some of our bigger brands, we're scaling a lot on broad. But remember, we've got a very, very personalized content. We talked about all this in the previous parts of the episode, and we're also directing it to a specific landing page. And then after that, once we've started testing it on broad and we find something working, then we can test it with top performing audiences that you might already have across the account, or that at that point you can do some interest-based research and start horizontally scaling out into further audiences. And then at that point, we obviously want to optimize again. So again, going back to the creative problem or conversion problem, and then it's about allocating resources into one of those areas. One thing I would say is if you are split testing landing pages, is you want to make sure you've always got that control. So if you've got one landing page which is working, a lot better across your accounts, have the control that you're testing with, and don't test too many things at one point. Because that's where you can get lost. And I find a lot of the time, even though people are testing against controls in the ad account, they're then split testing 10 different landing pages at once. So how are you going to see a fair test there? So you need to test controls across the customer journey. I think that's something a lot of brands can do better. And then after that, we're just scaling. So once we've got something proven to work, 20% usually on daily tests, like a 20% increases on the ad accounts. And then it's just about creating, going back through that process, keeping analyzing back through the ATOS process and creating more tests. So you always want to have 5-10% of the budget for new tests, even if you've got something scaling really well. So you never ever get complacent, because I'm sure you've had it before, Rock, and it's always the same and it always will be. You've got a creative that's absolutely firing off. You might even get from one video 1 million in spend, and it's converting like crazy. Then all of a sudden, and this is back to the diminishing returns of Facebook, what most people don't understand, it will just start dying off, because you will get creative fatigue, because no matter how good your brand is, no matter how good your product is, there's only so many people that are going to be able to see that. So again, I think that's where we can talk about that in a bit, but where a lot of people don't understand the incremental scale and the diminishing returns that come with Facebook. But then obviously we can get more strategic, like auto bid, cost cap campaigns. But that usually comes at high levels of spend. That's when we get to a point where we're just looking at 1% increases. And where in that funnel, even if we've got a really high performing creative, which is scaling really fast, whether it's through more iterations with creative, more iterations through landing pages, where we can just get those, even if it's 0.01, obviously we're spending $500,000 a month, that's going to be a big difference. So it's having that mindset of, I think, we call it in our business flywheel testing. We're always testing all of the time.
Always testing, always optimizing. Now, Nigel, this brings us to, I think, more or less our last question. And this one should be fun. So remember, we started saying that Facebook back in the old days made us a bit lazy. It helped us. You could sell practically anything on Facebook and profit. The algorithm was just so powerful, so strong. And nowadays, that of course has changed. So do you still sort of see, when you're selecting customers, when you're deciding which clients to work with, do you still, how to put it, see an opportunity for you guys to really do an amazing job as an acquisition agency on a bad product? Or do you now only focus on just really working with clients that have really good products that really deserve to be, they really deserve their place under the sun?
Yeah, the latter. I mean, I strategically did this. I'm fine to share the plate, but we work with supplements, skincare, beauty, and some CBD brands. The reason why that is because, sure, we can have the best content, we can have the best landing pages, but ultimately it's a game of unit economics. If you can outspend your competition by 3x, you're always going to win on these auction platforms. So if we work with brands that have customers which have a lifestyle of almost subscription, whether that's, a supplement products, I'm drinking Athletic Greens every day, I subscribe to them, I pay them like $100 a month, but those people, they've already got that kind of embedded in their lifestyle. So that means obviously on the front end, because they've got really good lifetime value, like I talked about the LTV to CAC ratio, that means we can just scale a lot more aggressively because they're willing to obviously make a loss on that first sale. But ultimately, and to your point, it does come back to products. We've actually got a brand we work with that if you saw their website, you would laugh. I can share it with you after the episode. You would probably laugh at what it looks like. This brand is probably our best performing brand. And the one reason why is because they have incredible products. The guy's like an old school business guy, and they just have incredible products. So when we post out, an image, it might just be literally like a simple image ad. You get thousands of people in the comments section just talking and sharing it with their friends about how this product has changed my life. And ultimately, that's the reason why they're so successful. And I think, again, the problem with a lot of the DTC brands when they got so ignorant, a lot of it was just hype marketing. And now what they're starting to see at higher levels as they're growing their companies, trying to grow them past 20 million a year, is that they're constantly chasing, trying to acquire new customers because the old ones aren't buying their products, just simply because instead of investing in their supply chain and in their products and in their manufacturers and in their ingredients or in their development and research and development, they were focusing on just acquiring more customers with hype marketing. And now we're seeing a clear out of that in the market. So ultimately, sure, all these tactics are great, but it comes back to basics. Do you have great products? Do you have a great team in place on the back end? And do you have a community? Are you building a brand? So when people look at your brand, they don't just associate it with, great product for skincare. They associate it with that product has changed my life for X, Y, and Z. Now I need to go and tell 5 of my friends.
I think this is actually a perfect place to wrap this up. Nigel, thank you very much. This was a super insightful interview. A lot of takeaways. Again, the TikTok part was fun, but I think for me, really the biggest takeaways is really the amount of energy you guys spend on building out customer insights, and then using that to personalize the entire funnel from the ad creative to the landing page, and really building out perfect acquisition experiences for customers. And in the end, the importance of having a good product, a good brand, community and essentially using marketing, in a way, even as a force of good to build out and to bring good brands to people with a long-term business development perspective instead of just doing fast one-off shots.
Yeah, I mean, ads, at the end of the day, we can end on this. Ads amplifies what's working. It also shines a light on what isn't working. So if you've got terrible products or very average products, the point is, communities and customers are getting a lot more educated through the internet. They're going to figure you out. So, let's just focus on the fundamentals, get the foundation, and then shine a light on what's already great. And that's what ads do, and that's what we do with our clients.
Nigel, thank you very much. Before we drop off, where can customers find out more about you?
Well, I think you already mentioned it, Rock, earlier. So I've been posting on LinkedIn now for about 14, 15 months. And it took a while. It took about 12 or so months to build a following of 10,000 people. And in the last 3 weeks, that's accelerated to nearly 20,000 people. So it's starting to compound. LinkedIn is my platform of choice. So if anyone doesn't know who I am listening to this podcast, just Google Nigel Thomas Alpha Inbounds. You'll see me on LinkedIn. Please connect. Even if we don't work with you, I love talking to inspiring entrepreneurs. Like I said, I talk to so many brands and I learn so much insights. And one thing I would say is, Rob, before we drop off, is I'm grateful for the fact that we get to work with, even if it's a bootstrap startup, because in the e-commerce space, the level of passion, I don't see it in any other space. The amount people care about their products and changing the world, that's what gets me up in the morning. And obviously, if we can help them distribute those stories out to more and more people, that's what I love to do. So connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to talk to you. And if any brands are out there in the 5 to 20 million range and they're looking to grow even further, or through their content, landing pages, all the stuff we've talked about today, then send me a direct message and we can have a conversation. We'll do a complimentary audit for any brand and we can design a roadmap that's specific for you to get you to that next stage of growth this year in 2023 and beyond.
Perfect. Nigel, thank you very much. And for everyone else, take care and I'll talk to you soon.
I really appreciate it, Rock. Have a great day, everyone.
And because you want more strategic e-commerce growth insights, conversations, and training, visit notblur.com.